What's going on, everyone? Happy Friday the 13th. I hope you all are having a great spooky season. Because it's Friday the 13th, I thought I'd talk about some of my picks for the best Friday the 13th movies. I just rewatched the entire Friday the 13th series leading up to this, and because it's spooky season, so might as well. We're starting off with Friday the 13th Part 6. This one is probably one of the more goofy and campy out of all of them. This might be the most goofy and campy. I mean, aside from the one where he goes to space, which that one is probably my least favorite out of the bunch, but we'll, cross that bridge. I like the method that they used to bring Jason back. I thought it was kind of clever. And this is what turns him into the unstoppable, super strong killing machine that he had the reputation for when I was a kid. When I was a kid, all of these movies had already played out, and people were walking around in Friday the 13th Halloween costumes with him looking like a zombie. And when I saw the first few, I'm like, well, how does he become a zombie then? Is he just already a zombie or something? Like, the lore on this is kind of weird and not exactly clear if you just watch the movies. This one definitely has its share of comedic moments like this one.
Real dead meat.
So, what were you gonna be when you grew up?
He's basically T-1000 at this point, and it's pretty gruesome. Oh yeah, viewer discretion, I guess, and all that. I mean, you're watching a Friday the 13th video. What do you expect? This movie doesn't take itself too seriously. I mean, there are some serious moments in the movie, obviously, because of the nature of it. But there are so many comedy beats in the movie, and it's just a fun, campy, classic horror movie. This shot right here bothered me even as a kid. It's like, look at that. He's clearly got the pole to the side, and you're doing a still shot. You could have just gently had the non-pointy end on her forehead and then, do the bubble thing like that. When I was a kid, I would watch AMC Fear Fest, and they would have a day or two just dedicated to a specific horror movie, slasher, or whatnot. They'd have a Nightmare on Elm Street day, they'd have a Halloween day, they'd have a Friday the 13th day. And that's where I got to see all of these old school horror movies. And they were always good fun and really entertaining to watch around the holiday season. They were never really scary, they were kind of just goofy to me as a kid, but that's, I'm sure they were kind of scary at the time, but they're not scary so much as they are kind of fun and campy. One of the other strong aspects of Part 6 is the two main characters, Megan and Tommy. They're both very entertaining, charismatic, and it doesn't hurt that Megan's pretty hot, even though she has that old lady haircut going on. But that was the thing. That was not an old lady haircut at the time, so,
You better do as she says. Because wherever the red dot goes, you bang.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. And it's just a fun, campy horror movie. It's definitely up there with one of my favorites, probably of all time. Just in terms of old, campy horror slasher flicks. It's just a good time. Tommy and Megan kind of have the whole Bonnie and Clyde thing going on. And you got the triple decapitation. Can you beat that? Next in the lineup, we actually have the movie following this movie. These two were just absolute bangers back to back. Friday the 13th Part 7, I think it's New Blood. And it's basically Jason versus Carrie, which this is the only versus Jason anything that I like. I don't like, just in principle, I don't like the idea of Jason versus anybody, but this one was handled kind of tastefully, even though Jason does kind of get his butt kicked. I really liked the first confrontation between the two of them, and just that like little screen thing. I know that was goofy, but still, I thought it was cool when I was a kid, and it is still pretty cool now. So, but in all seriousness, the reason I don't like Jason versus stuff is they put him up against people of the two. In both cases, they put him up against people he can't really beat. Like, Jason is not really going to be able to beat Carrie. She's already pretty busted. I know this isn't Carrie. Her name's Tina in the show, but this is basically Carrie. This is what they were going for. But Carrie kind of kicks his butt in this. And, I mean, if you had the Carrie from the 2013 Chloe Mozart, or Grace Mozart, whatever her name is. Yeah, Jason isn't going to be able to beat that unless he gets the drop on her, in which case it would be a one-shot. You know, if he, like, sneaks up on her or does a stealth kill, then yeah. But if he's, like, staring her down across the field, she's going to pull all his limbs off. But New Blood is pretty solid, just as a Friday the 13th movie. Tina's character is pretty entertaining. And, again, it's nothing too serious. I mean, it's not like anything's super well written here by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a fun, campy horror movie. Then they did a Friday the 13th reboot, which was actually not that bad. Like, I'm kind of surprised it didn't do better than it did. You know, it didn't do that well. But it's a basic horror slasher flick. And it was pretty fun. Jason was terrifying. He was actually, like, he full clip sprinted at people, which was not something we're accustomed to seeing from him. Plus, it's got Sam Winchester. Like, you can't go wrong. But somehow they did. I guess, you know, it's not very well written, but neither were any of the other ones. I guess this one's particularly. The character writing is kind of thin. If thin means non-existent. I mean, there are characters. They're just like, they're most stereotypical characters you could possibly get. But the spooks are quite good. Jason is very imposing. And that's really what we're here for. Well, that and Sam.
Sam? Sam! Sammy! Sam! Sammy! Sam! 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 Sam!
And back to the verses. I would call this like a loose recommendation. Like, this is for if you're drunk or high and you just want to see some really ridiculous nonsense. Because it was pretty fun, like the first time, to see Jason and Freddy fight each other, but it's about as ridiculous as you'd expect it to be, and the effects are not the best. And same thing with the character writing as the 2009 one. Very lousy character writing. But it, I don't know. Something about seeing Freddy and Jason fight each other was pretty entertaining. Even though it's a bit of a mismatch. Again, like Freddy, without external help on Jason's behalf, would have just killed Jason. I suppose they still would, because they always do that thing where they pull Freddy into the real world and they kill him, and then he's just alive in the dream world again. Almost like that doesn't actually stop him. It's like, it, you know, in the same vein as Jason, this is a problem with these kinds of verses, is nobody can really win up against these two. Like, it's just kind of fun to see it. Like I said, if you're drunk or high, good time. All the other Friday the 13th movies are good in their own right. Those were just my absolute favorite out of the series. Part 6, Part 7. It's kind of a tie between those two. I kind of lean more towards Part 6 just because I'm an old softie. I like the romance aspect. Part 7 is great too. I mean, they have like kind of a love plot in Part 7, but it's, I mean, you talk about very loosely connected or thin love plot. It's like absolute surface level. Whereas there's a lot more development with the relationship in the in Part 6. And Part 6 is just so funny. That's what really sells me on Part 6 is it's just so funny. And like a campy, ridiculous horror movie kind of way. It's almost like Evil Dead in that way, where it's just like, just, you know, there's so many nonsense scenes, but then there's also some like really kind of like, oh my god, that was pretty violent scenes. Like when Haas gets his heart ripped out, it's like, whoa. And hopefully they'll do well, I shouldn't even say that, because we saw what happened with the Halloween franchise when they tried to reboot it. That first one was so promising. It's such a shame that fell apart. Because that first, what was that, 2018? I think, when the first of the reboots for Halloween came out. That first one was very promising. And then the second one was awful. And then the third one was atrocious. So, as much as I would like for them to do a proper reboot of the Friday the 13th franchise, I don't think they would do it well. At least right now. The modern cinema is kind of garbage right now. So, until they can get their act together, no pun intended, I don't really want them touching any franchises I like. But we'll always have these classics to look back on. Well, I think that's going to do it for me. Have a great Friday the 13th and have a fantastic spooky season and stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.